I have uncovered documented evidence of money laundering, immigration fraud, discriminatory practices by the Gulenists against American educators and administrators, misappropriation of funds, and the systematic harassment and retaliatory measures lobbied against Gulenist opponents. Accordingly, there is a current and ongoing federal investigation into the activities of the Gulenists as related to the American charter schools. When I started my investigation into this cult and its infiltration into the 125 United States-funded chartered tax schools over 5 years ago, one of the more disturbing issues uncovered was the discriminatory practices volleyed against American educators. The majority of H-1B visa holders that were recruited by the movement did not possess the same teaching qualifications or licensure as the American applicants. Despite the fact that the majority of the American teachers hold graduate teaching degrees, most of the H-1B teachers were paid as much as $17,000 more than their American colleagues. Additionally, many of the Turkish school directors made upwards of $85,000 plus and did not have either an administrative license or graduate degree. Because H-1B visa holders must be paid the prevailing wage as determined by the Department of Labor, it is beneficial for the Gulenists to recruit as many cult members as possible to teach, paying them higher wages than Americans, resulting in more Tues Act kickback money. This practice is not limited to teaching positions, as the majority, if not all of the directors, business managers, deans of academics, and special projects coordinator positions are filled by Turkish male Gulenists who are usually under the age of 40. In fact, when it comes to the Gulen-inspired schools, there is rampant discrimination, but it's against the Americans, not the Turkish employees and board members, and it's the American taxpayers that are inadvertently funding these discriminatory practices against their own citizens. As an American and an educator who strives to provide the best education possible for our children, it is my sincere belief that the Gulenist schools and their respective administrators and board members do not have the best interests of our children at hand, and instead have a personal agenda, which is to continue to fund and expand the Gulen movement through the pockets of the American taxpayers. This movement and its expansion, I have one paragraph if I could finish.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
We'll have to yield the floor to the next speaker.
Okay, thank
you.
I have taken time off of work and traveled from Ohio to speak because I feel that it is important that the citizens of Loudoun County understand that based on my own personal experiences, that the LMIT Turkish applicants are more than likely part of the Gulen movement. Mr. Fatih Kandil worked at one of the Ohio schools that were managed by Concept Schools, the same company that also managed the school that I once worked at. When I was recruited to work as a network administrator at the Horizon Science Academy Denison Middle School. When I arrived in Cleveland on an H-1B visa and I placed at the school, I was told that I will be teaching computer classes, despite the fact that I had never taught school, nor do I possess a teaching degree. But since I have a bachelor degree, it was easy to get a substitute license from Ohio Department of Education, and which is typical among Turkish teachers. As a consequence, both my students and I struggled with the curriculum, and in all honesty, I feel as though the students received a substandard education. Likewise, other Turkish teachers that were recruited through the movement were also placed in math and science teaching position despite not having teaching experience or solid English communication skills. My H-1B visa fees were paid by the school, as were all of the foreign teachers and administrators. As required by the law, the schools were supposed to post and advertise any position that could be filled American workers. Concept schools went through the motion of advertising for positions, knowing that they would instead fill many administrative, math, science, and Turkish language positions with members of the Gulen movement. In my particular case, after every period, I was forced to return 40% of my salary back to the school's Turkish business manager in the form of cash. This money was applied to a secret and second set of accounting books that kept track of all of the TÜZİK money funds used towards Gulen's Hizmet movement. The amount that one had to pay back to the movement depends on the area of the country, marital and family status. And I eventually filed a complaint with the Department of Labor after lengthy taxpayer-funded litigation. Horizon was ordered to return $21,000 in back wages to me. While I employed at Horizon, all of the Turkish men from my school met weekly to discuss, among other things, the American employees and whose contracts should or should not be renewed. In addition, discussions about which Turkish men and women will be coming to work at schools and who will be moved to other schools were commonplace. This position included both teaching and administrative jobs. It is typical that Gulen-inspired Turkish employees deny their association with the movement, but I personally made a trip along with other Turkish concept school employees to his retreat in the Poconos like the other Turkish employees do. What I have told you tonight may not seem relevant to the issue at hand, which is whether or not to grant LMIT application, but in fact it is, because it is quite likely that the very people making this application are connected to the Gulen movement. The movement pursued its agenda in covert way in which the American public is not aware of their connections to the Gulen movement, but instead is made to believe that the Turkish school employees' only interest is to educate American children. Before you vote, you may consider exactly whose best interest the applicants have, those of the Loudoun County children or the Gulen movement.
Taxpayer of Loudoun County, and have had the privilege of talking with you a number of times about this issue, both corporately and in some cases privately. I appreciate the opportunity to do so again tonight in your last formal public input session. Let me ask you a question. If a cultish German nationalist were operating a chain of schools across the United States promoting his strain of Aryan supremacism, would you want to approve an application for a charter school that would allow millions of tax dollars to flow to a group of this particular individual's following, inspired by his problematic agenda? I can't conceive of it. And yet, as we speak, you are still considering a proposal that I think in important respects is very similar without addressing its proponents' very problematic ties. You've heard from two individuals tonight who have been in the belly of the beast of Gulen schools. One, a Turk, who despite the brevity of the time allotted to them have attested to the character of this operation. Is the question that you're still considering this because this is a Turkish supremacist, cultish figure as opposed to an Aryan nationalist? I don't know. But I do know that these associations are every bit as problematic, both to our country and I believe to the school system and the people of this county that you serve. We have talked in previous sessions, and other people providing inputs, and I think even your own staff have identified serious problems with this application. Those who have brought to your attention the sorts of problems that I encountered last week in Fulton County, Georgia, and that you've just heard about in Cleveland, Ohio, and that you can hear about in Texas and elsewhere across this country are real, and they cannot be fixed because of this connection to Gulen. You can kid yourself into thinking if you write a contract, you'll be able to hold them to it. All of the experience suggests you will not. And this is why I believe you have not only a fiduciary responsibility to reject this problematic program, I believe you have a responsibility to the constituents you represent to spare them what is coming, as it has in school district after school district. And let me just conclude by saying, as I did in a column which I'd like to leave with you tonight in the Washington Times today, you have a duty under the code of this county's school board, which says, quote, "I must never neglect my personal obligation to the community and my legal obligation to the state, nor surrender these responsibilities to any other person, group, or organization, but that beyond these, I have a moral and civic obligation to the nation, which can remain strong and free only so long as public schools in the United States are kept free and strong." That is not the object of the Gulen movement. And I believe this application should be rejected because it is of a piece with that very different agenda and at odds with your responsibilities. Thank you very much.
My name is James Lafferty. I live in Alexandria, Virginia, and I am the chairman of the Virginia Anti-Sharia Task Force. There's no doubt in my mind that this Gulen school syndicate is a pro-Sharia operation going by yet another name, and they go by many names, but this is just another one of those. Not only do I think that, but a number of other bodies from the Board of Education of the City of Philadelphia has questioned the way the school is operated, to Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes and the Washington Post. They have all talked about the mysterious Imam Gulen, who hides out in the Poconos, that he doesn't answer questions, doesn't meet with people. And the question that only seems to remain is the school application incomplete, and are these people with their signs refusing to provide the necessary information because they choose not to or because they don't know how to? In either case, I suggest those are grounds for not handing a school over to them in Loudoun County, here in Virginia. We have a responsibility, all of us, to protect people here. It's not caveat emptor. This is not the Old West. People who hide out, people who express the sort of radical views, who have told people that a big part of their operation is deception, should not be allowed to found a school and to use the reputation of a school. If this were someone, to follow on Mr. Gaffney's example, if this was a teacher applying for a job as a gym teacher in this county, and he said, well, I can't tell you where I've been, I can't tell you really what I think, I can't tell you what I'm going to do, I can't tell you, who I really am. But I want you to turn over a whole class full of kids to me every day. There's no doubt in my mind what the answer from all of you would be, given the experience that we've had in some of the nation's schools. And I urge you to apply the same standard that you would apply to that gym teacher to this school, which is pretending to be something it isn't, and which is probably something that none of you would like.
But Saeed Nursi says we have to link science with faith, which I don't have a problem with that. But what he's basically saying is we need to build up the Islamic world through science and technology, and you have to take that technology out of the West in order to make the Islamic world supreme. What Gulen did, and in accordance with the same DOD report, is he builds on Saeed Nursi's jihad of the sword is no longer the issue, it's jihad of the word. And that is, you go into the education movement and you educate and you take science and technology out of the West for the purpose of advancing Islam. He coined the phrase, jihad of the word. Fethullah Gulen reinvented the Nur movement as Turkish Islam. He departed from Nursi's emphasis on individual transformation and focused on the public sphere and on turning Islam into Islamic networks and social capital. The Gulen movement, although it's active in promoting harmony among Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, and it sponsors a variety of fora for interfaith dialogue, its web of organizations propagates Gulen's vision of Islam, not Western philosophy, not the idea of individual rights. And he has set this up and moved this out. I've presented you with information about the international movement. I'm not sure what else to say to you all, but this is a direct link that a science and technology school serves the purpose of advancing Islamic view of the world. That's not what we're about. We can debate that, and that's not the purpose of taxpayer funding. The last thing I'd like to make the point is you hear a lot about Islamophobia. A phobia, by definition, is an irrational fear based on certain facts and circumstances. But simply by getting up here and disputing this and making the case against it because it is Islamic in orientation, you have the grandiose privilege of being labeled an Islamophobic and finding yourself in this report, which is the Organization of Islamic Conference, which is moving to shut down any debate of these types.